There are plenty of people who would like to retire very early, or as I say, it's not retirement, it's financial freedom. It's the ability to work very hard at a job that you get weary of and be able to find another job that's very fulfilling to you, but make it with making less money.
Welcome to an inspirational people interview on the Share Life podcast. I'm Jason Scott Montoya, and in this episode, I'm speaking with wealth management advisor at Apollon, Peachtree Corners, Kassi Hyde. Kassi, say hello.
Hi.
Kassi, I, and some others were in a leadership mastermind together in 2012, so 13 years ago. Our lives have changed quite a bit since then, but we originally met in 2011, I think, at the Gwinnett Chamber of Commerce. For most of my freelancing journey, which I started in 2014, I've been working with Kassi's father, Thomas Burge, to do my taxes every year. And no, he's not taking any more customers. I was one of the last. Now, you work for your dad for about 10 years. You're originally from Southern California, and you've been in the financial planning industry for over 2 decades. You're currently a wealth management advisor at Apollon, a fee-based strategic wealth planning firm, and you're also a wife and mother of 2 teenage boys. Kassi, to get us started, tell us a little bit more about you and your story.
Sure. So yes, as you mentioned, originally from Southern California, lived there till about middle school age and spent a little
Like San
time in
Diego
Georgia.
area? Which part?
That was actually Escondido. So yes, just outside of San
Okay.
Diego. And then in Laguna Niguel as
Okay.
well. I've been here in Georgia for, I keep forgetting to add years, 25, 30
Yeah.
years. So
Yeah.
I'd say it's home. I say it's home.
Yeah.
So yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that's how I feel. I'm from Arizona, so I moved here in 2005, and I've been here just about as long as I've been in Arizona, and definitely feel like at home now.
I ended up marrying a native to Georgia, which is fun. But yes, we've got 2 teenage boys who keep us very, very busy. And they like to play lacrosse. We love to golf, be outdoors, travel, kind of all the fun stuff you get to do as a family when you can find the time.
Yeah, yeah. What are some places you've gone?
So travel wise, just getting started on the international front, which makes me very excited. I definitely have
Ah,
been bitten by the travel bug, but we love Costa Rica. Belize
okay.
is one of our
Yeah,
favorite places. We love Belize. So we've been to both there. We're planning a trip soon over to the Mediterranean. So I'm
yeah,
very excited about that. And, honestly, we sometimes forget we need to hit up more states in the good old US. And
yeah.
so trying to do a little bit of that. In fact, this coming weekend we'll be up in Boston for the
Okay.
NCAA Final Four and
Wow,
championship
congrats.
for lacrosse. So we're very excited about that.
Yeah, that's exciting. Is
Yeah.
is that I mean, how did you all get into lacrosse? It's it's becoming more popular, but it wasn't really anything I knew about when I was younger.
Me neither. Me neither. So our kids probably started when they were around 9 or so. We live in Forsyth County, and so this very much is a lacrosse county. And
Okay.
so we were introduced to it when they were kids, had no idea what we were watching, and just haven't never, they've just loved it, have never stopped since. And yeah, and my oldest is playing in high school now for Lambert High School, which they just won the championship, the state championship.
Okay.
So
Wow.
very exciting stuff.
Yeah. Now, how did you get into financial planning? Like, where was that the plan all along?
No, not exactly. I was managing multifamily housing for a couple properties in Buckhead, and I had moved here having done that previously. But as you mentioned, my father's a CPA, and he's been a financial planner for years, and knew it was time for a change. A lot of similarities when you're managing properties. It's like running a business, but I really enjoyed working with people more directly. And so I thought I'd give it a try and haven't looked back since. And so
Yeah.
kind of got my background in insurance when I first started. And so I earned my CHFC designation, which is very similar to CFP, but has a little heavier focus on insurance. And so that's kind of what got me started. And obviously haven't looked back since. I really enjoy it.
Yeah. Now, from a personality standpoint, what aspects of your personality lend to uh to the financial planning side of things?
I think there's 2 big pieces to that. I would say the first is attention to detail. I love to event plan. I like to craft an experience for people. So
Mm,
when it comes to how I work with clients, I am very much into the psychology of what it's like to be on their side of the table, how they experience things, how they feel about things. And so it's kind of detail oriented and psychology at the same time.
yeah.
Whereas naturally I'm a planner. I think ahead,
Okay.
I think of the details, I think of the what ifs. And so that I think that coupled with just the nature of really caring about people and wanting to work with them one on one really kind of lends itself as well.
Yeah, yeah. So, would you consider yourself more introverted or extroverted in that?
I am definitely an introvert. I surprise a lot of people when I tell them that. But I got to tell you, when I'm out speaking or working with people on a larger level, I get worn out very quick. So I
Yeah.
am definitely an introvert.
Yeah, so you draw you can do it, but you draw your energy when you're by yourself, what, reading a book?
Yes, right. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Now, how so you for a while you worked with your father, and
Mm-hmm.
so what type of business did he have, and how did that play out?
Yeah, so very similar to what I'm doing now. Really personalized financial planning, tax planning, investment management. You know, he is a CPA. I am not. So that he was definitely more of the numbers oriented when it came to actual
Uh,
tax returns. But yeah, so we started to work together. We realized very quickly over the years that it was great, but he was eventually going to move to retirement, and I wanted to work with a larger team so I could
yeah.
have that vacation and take
Yeah.
a break and have other team members to lean on. And because to me, life work balance is really important. I really want that freedom of being able to serve my clients as I need to, but also being with my family. And so we eventually he ended up selling the firm. He still does some work additionally since then, but I ended up with United Capital at the time, back in, gosh, what was that? That was probably 2014. And so since then, we've been a bit of it's been a bit of a whirlwind. I stayed with them for a while, and then United Capital as a whole got sold to Goldman Sachs. Goldman Sachs just in the last couple of years decided to sell United Capital's division. And so that's been going on, I guess, 2 years now. It's all starting to run together. And so they ended up selling it again, to another firm, at which point we then decided to go with Apollon Wealth.
Okay.
Mhm.
Now, so I guess with the like all the transitions that you went through, if if someone's listening and they're at one of those points, or they're going through it, or they're about to go through
Mhm.
it, what would be some wisdom you'd give them, some lessons learned, some things you might think about differently?
Yeah, so it can be very daunting, right? There's a big world of financial planning out there. Not all firms are the same. We all tend to do things a little differently, but I think just kind of like what I tell my clients is that your relationship with your financial advisor needs to be a personal one. You need to be able to ask any question, and get the answer that you need. It should not be, there should not be any fear of asking questions, or you should feel fully comfortable. And I think that
Mhm.
goes along with the firm you also work for, how you work with your clients every day. There's things to be said about having freedom and autonomy, but you also need the oversight and the guidance as well. Being
Yeah.
alone in this industry is incredibly daunting, with the
Mm,
regulations we deal with, and all of that. And so, having a firm like Apollon who can provide that guidance to you, who can do the due diligence and all the different resources out there, is incredibly important because times are changing and they're changing fast. And as advisors, I love to embrace that. We need to embrace that. This is a
yeah.
different world than even just 5 years ago when it comes to finances. And that's okay. We just need to know that we're with a firm that supports that, helps, gives
Yeah.
us the resources that we need. So I think at the end of the day, the importance is knowing that somebody's providing you guidance and resource so that you can then feel confident to go out and serve your clients the best that you can.
Yeah. And what is it that, like, what are the values that Paulin has that really resonated with you in terms of choosing them and working
Mhm.
with them, and how that interfaces with your clients?
I think it was kind of the perfect balance of having freedom, with oversight. And so they don't by any means, this is not, and this is really never who we've been, but it's not a firm that tells you what you need to be doing. Um, Go out there and find five new clients, or you need to be working
Mhm.
on this, or whatever the case may be. They're really flexible in what you want your practice to look like. At the same time, they want to encourage you and be supportive if you have growth goals as well. They're very open-minded. You can sit down and talk with the C-suite and have a conversation about what's important to you, or hey, I'm struggling with this, can you help me? And they're very open with that. And so I'd say one of the biggest things is that they are very open-minded and open door. So you can talk to anybody. All of the advisors are willing to lend a hand or give some advice or guidance if they specialize in certain areas. And so we really have a network of advisors across the nation who are essentially all on our team, who are
Yeah.
willing to sit down and talk with you if you have a custom problem or a client that has a situation you need help with. So I think that was really important to have a network of other advisors for support, and to know that they're supporting you as well, eh, to just really be the best that you can be. It's meant to be personalized. It's meant to be, each person is different, and it's not a cookie cutter approach at all.
Yeah. So, where does that desire for you to be so relational in your work in terms of caring about the person and helping them? Where does that derive from? Is that something how you've always been?
You
Or has
know,
that
that's a
evolved?
good question. I think so. I mean, I will. I'm very analytical, which comes obviously naturally to what I do. So I'm very good at analyzing the bigger picture. But I think what really drives me is psychology. I love to understand how people think and feel, and what drives that. We all have biases. We all think differently, and so really understanding the reasons for that, why we might think about something, why we make the decisions we make is so important. And so I think it's just always been very interesting to me that when I look at somebody or I look at a situation and they've made a decision, I want to go behind that. I want to understand why. What was driving you? What were your thoughts and feelings? Because that's what really gets at who we truly are. And it also helps us adapt and change. And it doesn't mean
Yeah.
you need to change everything, but it means if I want to get better at something or think differently about something, I can figure out how I think about it in the first place and get around that and better understand how change is possible as well.
Yeah. Well, and I think this kind of ties back to your point about like not condemning people for how they feel or think,
Right.
because at the end of the day, we're like creatures of desire. We want something, right? And so we want to get towards that. And I think the more honest we can be about the things we want, the more helpful you can be to helping people accomplish those objectives. Is that kind of,
Absolutely. Everybody has a trade off. There's something that they want to spend, and to be more specific on money, there's always something that they want to spend more money on. For some people, it's they want a new car every year, every couple years. For some people, they want to take big vacations. For others, they just want to have a good, solid cash balance sitting somewhere just in case something happens. Whatever that piece or whatever that feeling that is driving your decision making, you just have to own that. There's no
Mhm.
right or wrong. For
Yeah,
me, it's about trade-offs. If you want this one thing, you may have to give up some of this other thing to have it. And so it's really trade-offs, and understanding what those look like for each person.
yeah. And it seems like right now, in the way that things are going in our world and our country, we're in a season of having to make a lot of choices on trade-offs.
Yeah.
Talk to us more about that.
Yes. So it is an interesting world we live in, and I feel like things have changed pretty fast. You know, people are making, even kids straight out of college are making more money than they ever have, and really getting back to the fundamentals of how to build your financial lifestyle. It can be very overwhelming, especially for the younger generations, of how do I get started out right? How do I start building the base of what I need for my financial freedom? And it is not the same for everybody. There are plenty of people who would like to retire very early, or as I say, it's not retirement, it's financial freedom. It's the ability to maybe work very hard at a job that you get weary of and be able to find another job that's very fulfilling to you, but make it with making less money. And
Mm,
so it's the ability to have that financial freedom. But as people are looking today with those different trade-offs, you know, the underlying fundamentals haven't changed. It really just comes down to our nature, the things that are in our face every day. It's
yeah,
easy to get wrapped up in what people have. because
Mhm.
that's all they're sharing, right? You're not saying what they don't have. And so I try to tell people is just take a step back. Just like when they walk in my door, I'm not judging them against the last person I saw. Everybody has a different story. And you've got to remember that about yourself and the other people you see out there,
Yeah.
because they have a different story to tell. And even though you may think you want, what they have, you may not once you start to realize what they've given up for that.
Yeah, what the
Yeah.
trade-offs were.
Uh-huh.
So on that note, like when you think about the idea of living better, what does living better mean to you?
I think living better means having freedom, having balance. I just had a client tell me the other day that they felt incredibly free, that they have
Mm,
worked hard their entire life and could now accomplish the various things that they wanted, that they never would have foreseen that they would have needed. That's the key.
mm.
You can't always identify specific goals really far in advance. That life changes and your story changes. And so
Yeah.
really at the end of the day, I feel like it's having freedom. It's maybe the ability to take off a year and pursue new goals or
Mhm.
hobbies.
Yeah.
Maybe it's the ability to get that higher level promotion that you've really been wanting. And so I think freedom really comes into that, where balance or living better is being true to what you want, recognizing when maybe something isn't working out as you had intended. Maybe it isn't, you aren't where you need to be,
Yeah.
and recognizing that's okay, that you will find the road intended for you. I always say that don't regret what you've done in the past. That's what's made you, and God has a plan and a roadmap for you. So,
Yeah.
I think it's just important to recognize that having the ability to make changes, make decisions along the way without worrying about paying the bills or managing other things is truly a financial freedom that comes with living better. Now, at the same time, it also means being true to yourself. What's really important to you? What do you value? As we used to call it, your one best financial life, where you would really tune into how you wanted to live and what that freedom really looked like, and just making sure that you're building stepping stones to being able to accomplish that.
Yeah. So I'd be curious to for you to dive into the idea you talk about freedom, like the opposite. I was talking to someone the other day about how their situation and their job and their income, they felt like like a modern day slave.
Hmm.
Even though they were getting paid for their work, they just felt trapped.
Yeah.
And I think that's a lot of people, and I think we might be surprised that it's a lot of people that probably make a lot of money too.
Right.
Talk to us about that.
It's funny you bring that up. I have had more conversations about that recently, and I'm publishing an article on LinkedIn and a few other places in the next month or so about transitions. Whether it is, like you said, you're in a high level position and it's just not working out, and you either want a little more freedom on time or balance, or maybe it's just not the kind of work that really creates passion for you. And so there's a lot of opportunities out there. I feel like today there are even more opportunities than there were maybe 10 years ago, where being going freelance or starting your own business or just approaching work a little differently, employers are even more open minded.
Mhm.
I think, we obviously went through the pandemic and realized we could all work from home. And then we've kind of come full circle to know we need to come back together. And there are benefits to both sides of that. And so I think we've learned a lot and there's a lot more freedom. So I tell people, that it is great to have a sounding board. Talk to somebody about what you're thinking. Think
Mhm.
about the elements of your day to day work that you love and the elements that you don't love.
Mhm.
How can you fine tune those things and turn them into a full time job that you're doing one specific area more full time?
Yeah.
And I think you'll find sometimes employers are even flexible with that because they recognize how much more they can get out of an employee when they're fully passionate about what
Yeah.
they're doing as well.
Yeah. So on the work side, what does it mean to work smarter? How do you think about working
Oh,
effectively and efficiently?
that's a great question. I think in a lot of ways, just having processes in place. I mean, I will fully admit I do not have the best memory. And so I have to have processes, notes and systems in place so that I remember every conversation that I have with my
Mm,
clients. So I think working smarter means using those resources around you, looking for ways to really navigate the way you work on a daily basis to free yourself up. I'd say one of the biggest exercises that was most, I'd say, life changing to me was, gosh, I don't even know how many years ago I did this now. It was a while ago. I was making a transition from where I was supporting other advisors to not doing any support and doing my own book 100%. And it was a little daunting. I was a little worried about it. Would I be able to bring in enough business to do this full time? And so I spent probably, I want to say 3 to 4 months documenting every 15 minutes of my day. Now, it sounds very tedious. I did it literally pen to paper back then. You can do it obviously a lot easier now, but what it taught me was, first of all, the time I spent on things I spent it on, it opened my eyes to things maybe the time I was wasting, to also, I wasn't really spending as much time on some things that I thought I was.
mm,
So then I could look at that and say, well, if I want to now add business development in some level, I have this much time to devote. So I can do this. I know I can. And so it can open your eyes to either time you're wasting, time you're spending too much on things that are maybe not at your level that somebody else should be doing. And it also can convince you that you are capable of maybe a new project or a new idea. I think the other key to this, though, is you've really got to empower the people that you work with as well. Trust the people that you work with, your team, and see where their skills lie and use that to work together as a team because it will give them meaning and passion. And you'll end up all getting much more accomplished. So, I think that's another key thing is really empowering those around you as well.
yeah. How, if someone wants that, but they're more isolated, like what advice would you give to them?
There's a lot of tools out there, which can be hard to navigate because if you did a quick search on something, you'd find probably 5, 6 different softwares that did the same thing. So I will say that recently I had been working on a software that connected me with people, and somebody within the firm saw that. Actually, I take that back. They were at a different firm, they were not even at Apollon. Saw that, saw my name, and reached out and said, hey, I just want your feedback. How does this work for you? Do you like it? And so I encourage you to reach out and talk to your peers in your industry, even at different firms, and say, hey, I just really wanted your opinion on this. How does this work? Especially when you're kind of that solo entrepreneur, you may be a little bit out on your own. Reach out to others. I think people are really willing to help and give feedback in ways that they never thought to share. And so I'd say reach out to your community and ask and just say, again, to get feedback on certain tools. There's a lot of new things out there, especially with AI, that are can be really helpful and really streamline a lot of processes.
Yeah. I think one of the things you're hinting at is the idea of there's so much volume and so much noise and so many things going on
Mhm.
that there's a really high level of value for someone that's sorting through that
Mhm.
to get to the thing that matters. And I think that's kind of the essence of what you do for people
Right.
is you are the person that we go to, so we don't have to learn everything and figure it all out. We just go to you who has already figured it out. Talk to us about that idea of curation and guidance.
Yes. So, and I will admit that that's a big story. It's hard to find the right resources out there, right? But I think again, it's got to go back to personality. You've got to connect with people on a personal level. But yes, I mean, really, there is a lot of noise these days, especially in my industry. You can read about anything online. You can feel like you know everything about a topic from top to bottom. I'll have people bring something to me that said, "Hey, I read I can do this." Yes, but actually you can't. They're not always as familiar with the fine details, or there's the trade-off to it. There's
Mhm.
different things that you could be doing. Let me give you a quick example. So you're hearing all the time these days about 401k savings and how all these new opportunities with pre-tax, post-tax, Roth, all these different ideas. All great. In fact, these are really great conversations I'm having with clients, especially who work for larger companies who are offering a lot of these resources. The key is to understanding what the trade-offs are. Everybody is saying you need to have more money in your Roth IRA. You need to push Roth. Well, that's great. But if you're in a high tax bracket and you stop doing the tax deductible side of your 401k, you're going to pay a lot more in taxes. You have to just look at that trade-off. It doesn't fit for everybody. For some people, it's a great balance. For others, they need to create maybe a combined approach to that. So that's just one example of where you can't just take what you read and understand that this is perfect for everybody. Everybody should be doing this. No, it's more personalized, and you got to look at your personal situation to determine really what matters the most for you. So, yes, so we kind of cut through all of that and start to have conversations about, there are these opportunities, but this works great for you and this may not work great for you. So I think, again, it's easy to find data, but you've got to make sure that you understand what the trade-offs are sometimes to those decisions and where you might miss that point.
Yeah. And I think a big, I guess a word that comes to mind as you talk about all that is trust.
Hmm.
So talk to us about trust and how you foster that trust, not just relationally, but also in the way that you structure how the company structures things or how you structure your systems.
Sure. So there's a couple of things that really come to mind really quickly is I can't tell you how many times I've met with somebody who became a client and said, "Yeah, my previous advisor wouldn't return my call for days." I don't understand that in any way,
Yeah.
shape, or form.
Yeah.
It's just not even part of who we are. We like to call or we like to refer to our 24-hour rule, where you will hear from me within 24
Yeah.
hours. Regardless, if I don't have an answer, you're going to hear back from me. That
Yeah.
is huge for a lot of people. Just knowing they can call, email,
Yeah.
find us relatively quickly if they have a quick question or if they have something that comes up that needs to be handled now, somebody's going to be available for
Yeah.
them
Well, and
immediately.
even as a freelancer, that's like one of the biggest differentiators, is if you just respond to people's emails and phone calls and texts within a day, like you're already in the top 10%.
You're absolutely right. I mean, it amazes me that this is a struggle for people, but yeah, so that's one big thing. And also I recognize the big lift it is for people to put trust in us. And
Yeah.
so I really try to make sure, again, kind of curate that experience, the conversations that we have. How do you like to communicate? How often do you want to communicate? What would make this a little more comfortable for you as we go through this process? I had one client who found it really difficult to make a shift, had asked me for some referrals, which I provided, and she did, and it really came down to the fact she was worried I would just take everything over and start doing things the way I wanted to without talking to her. And
Mm,
of course, that's not how I operate. I always tell people, no matter what, we're going to talk through the process until you get comfortable with what I'm doing on a day-to-day basis. And today she says, I wish I did it sooner. I'm so glad we did what we did because I just wasn't sure you were going to communicate with me. And so whenever I get that, again, you have to listen to what people's experiences have been so that you can make sure to do better than what they've experienced in the past. It can be so many different things,
yeah.
whether it is communication or just coming to a meeting, asking a question and being waved off.
Mm,
That's not really an important question. Listen, don't worry, I got this. Just trust me. That's not a way to do business because the other person has to have trust based on the answers that you give. They need
yeah.
to feel comfortable
Demonstrate
on their own.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so to me, it's very important to listen, to understand what's important to them. And so then I can educate and guide. I'm never doing decisions on my own. This is always about them. And so even though most of my clients will say, you do it, I'm not concerned. Well, that's great, but I still want you to understand at least the
Yeah.
basics of what we're doing. And it builds that trust because then they know that if they have questions, they can ask them and I will answer them for them.
Yeah. So talk to us about the importance in your story in the idea of mentoring. How has mentoring played a role in your journey in transitions?
Yeah. Mentoring's, I feel, a huge thing. I feel, especially in our industry, you can know everything there is to know financially, but when you're dealing with people, that takes some time and some skill. It doesn't fit for everybody. And so I think it's incredibly important to spend time with others, both on both sides of things. I've always looked to learn from everybody around me. I always love to have a diverse team because everybody comes to the table with a different personality and a different approach, and I love that. I never want to be the only voice in the room because I want to hear and I want to learn and I want to get better from those around me. And just like how I really appreciate that, I love to pass that on to
Yeah.
others. I've been through some interesting and kind of unique situations of business development that helped me learn the hard way, and it taught me a lot of dealing with people and so forth. And so I want to share that with others, and I am always willing to share that because it just means we all grow and we get smarter and better at
Yeah.
what we do.
Yeah. What has your career and work taught you about being a mother?
Oh, goodness. Well, it's exciting, I will say, to see my 16-year-old now start to take an interest in finance, not because of
Mm.
me. I said, you choose what you want to do. But I think he really gets, or he's really interested in how the world works,
Mm,
especially today. It is different than it was just even 5 years ago. But I would say you really have to keep up with the changing times. You joke when you're raising kids, just when you think you figure them out, they change it all up, right?
yeah.
Whether it's through ages and stages or whatever the case may be, is just be willing to change and adapt. I think
Yeah.
that's huge. And I think that's what parenting has taught me is being willing to change, adapt, and recognize your own shortfalls because you're a
Mhm.
human being and you're not perfect.
Yeah.
And so when you take that to work as well, it's okay to say you don't know the answer and that you'll find it. It's okay if you do make a mistake to own it. It's okay to work with others who might make a mistake and you're there to help guide them. I think just being able to adapt, change, and learn is really the key points, I would say, between
Yeah.
the two.
Yeah. So, I mean, the words that come to mind are pride and humility, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So talk
Very
to
much
us more
so.
about that contrasting dynamic.
Right. Right. Yeah, it's important to just always want to learn and grow yourself,
Yeah.
and to recognize that, and both professionally and as a parent or in whatever family you might be in, is that we're all human beings and we have our moments when we need a little forgiveness. And so I think just again being very open-minded and humble, as you had mentioned, to the world and the people we live in
Yeah.
and with.
What prevents us from being humble like that?
Well, I can say it can be hard sometimes when you've been doing something for a very long time.
Yeah.
Sometimes you think but at the same time, you often find that there's something you don't know, and
Yeah.
that can keep you from being humble at times. It can also it's also hard too when you speak to the parenting aspect of putting ourselves in the shoes of our children, because this world is very much different than when we were kids, and
Mhm.
trying to recognize that as and I think that goes with really any generation in every situation, whether they're older or younger than you, is putting yourself in their shoes
Yeah.
for a minute to understand where they're coming from. It does not mean you have to appreciate or agree with everything, but it
Mhm.
means you understand where they come from. And that can make a
Yeah.
big difference to when you're interacting with others as well.
Yeah. So let's talk about stories. How have fictional or real stories shaped you as a person, or stories that you've kind of been more drawn to than others? Talk to us about stories and narratives.
Yeah, I was thinking about that's a hard one. I will say when we recently did an event that focused on storytelling, we worked with 15 different women who we interviewed. These were women we mainly already knew, at least a good part of what their life and career was about. But the process of interviewing and learning their story changed your perspective because you learned things you hadn't known before. You learned about what colored their life, where they came from, who was important to them. So I'd say that was probably the most important things that I've learned. I don't know that there's any big stories out there that, some people say, "Hey, when I read this book or when I learned about this person, it changed my life forever." I don't know that there is any one specific that really changed me. But I think again, just following a lot of different stories of different people who look to be gracious in all they do, look to be the best that they can be in what they do, and creating that balance of being true to themselves and being true to the world around them as well. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
What are some of the stories people tell themselves that when it comes to financial planning,
Mhm.
investing, that sabotages themselves?
Sometimes it can be time oriented. I waited too long. I've got plenty of time to do that. I don't need to focus on that now. That can go in different directions on both ends, whether you need to start earlier or later. It can also, when you look at different perspectives as well, again, often enough people think they do come to the table concerned with, I'm not smart enough. I should know more about this. I should know what I'm doing.
Mm,
Or I already know everything. I don't
mhm,
need somebody. I can do this. Well, often enough, it's not the knowledge, it's honestly the navigation and getting it
mm,
done. Often enough, people come to us because they just don't have the time or the energy to do the research and better understand. And so that's kind of where we come into play, is helping them navigate so
yeah,
many different things out there.
yeah. So when someone comes to you with one of these narratives that is self-sabotaging, how do you help them untangle that and get the right story in place?
Yeah, so sometimes we'll use exercises that really kind of focus on our biases,
Hmm.
why we think or feel the way we do about money, what triggers some of that, what our experiences are. So often I'm just asking questions, what has your
Yeah.
experience been with that? So why do you feel, you think, well, where did that ideal come from for you? And
Hmm.
often enough, it's personal experience with family, with friends, things that happen to them directly, and that tends to feed into what they now have as a new mindset. And so we try to
Yeah.
work around that a little bit to say, now, again, like I said before, now we understand why you're thinking this way. Let's figure out how we can either change that or just make you more comfortable in it as well.
Talk to me about systems. How do you think about systems? How do you use them? How do they play out in your work?
Yeah, so there's a lot of great systems. I mean, in our industry, we deal with a ton of fine detail, ton of things to keep track of, and so it's really important, I think, to have good systems in place, good operational systems too that don't bog down the process. Right? You need people to be able to understand the process, be able to repeat it, and teach somebody else. And so I think the fine line to building processes is making it as simple as possible, but as robust as possible so that anybody can do it and it can be done seamlessly, because it makes a huge difference when you have a process. If you don't, it tends to be a little
Mm,
willy nilly all over the place. And especially with what we do for a living and the ability to work as teams, our teams need to know the
mm,
same thing, to working with whatever advisor they're working with, that it's the same process for everybody. And so that everything, again, that allows me to potentially step away, and if somebody needs something, they can answer it, and it's because of those processes that really make it happen.
yeah. So when does a system become tyrannical?
When there's no ability to change or improve, I'd say
Mm,
when it becomes so set in stone that we ignore that it's stopped really solving a problem, but becoming
yeah.
more of a problem itself. So I think at the end of the day, it needs to make things easier. If it's not making things easier, then there's something wrong. Yeah.
And yeah, that's interesting. And I guess that adaptability, I feel like this theme of adaptability is
Hmm.
like your story.
Hmm. Yeah.
So talk to us about that.
Well, I'd say again, I mean, the way it's kind of the way I've leaned into it is, like we said, with family, with our industry, my industry has changed a lot and it's going to constantly change. And I think that makes me embrace it even more. I love
Yeah.
it. There are a lot of advisors out there who have been doing the same thing for years, and that's
Mm,
great. But we have younger generations who think differently, see things
yeah.
differently because they've lived in a different world. And I want to be able to see what they see and talk through that. There are a lot of fundamentals to financial planning that are not going to change anytime
Yeah.
soon, but we have to change and adapt to how we get there and what it looks like to make
Yeah.
sure we speak everybody's language.
Yeah. I think I heard some recently, read some things that one of the largest wealth transfers in the history of mankind is unfolding
Mhm.
between I guess the aging generation and then the millennials. Is that true? And what are your thoughts on that?
It is. It is. We're seeing a couple different things going on where, yes, the baby boomer generation is passing on to the next generation. And, back in the day, it used to always been you would just, you'd naturally pass that on to the next generation and they would just work with the same advisor just because there weren't either a lot of options or they had no real experience. But that's changing. A lot of people are seeing this coming. I feel like the baby boomer generation is very smart about this. They see it coming. They want to position their families better. They had their own experiences with their own parents and they may not necessarily want to repeat everything they went through. And so they're thinking a little more strategically on that level. And so that means needing to again speak the language of different generations. We work with a lot of multi-generational families. It's something that we really love, but it also creates that seamless passing of wealth that can be really important to everybody involved. But it also means you have to be willing to change and
Mm,
rethink it. You can't do for the next generation necessarily what you did for the first generation. They think
yeah.
differently, they feel differently, and they have different goals. And so you have to adapt to that and change, or else they're not going to want to work with you. They're going to go to somebody else. I think the other big part of this is to, as women are becoming widowed, there's a
Mm,
lot of wealth transfer going on there as well. And this is something that's really near and dear to my heart as well, because I feel often enough it is still a situation where it is, the wife is the spouse who wasn't as involved. We're seeing that change, but we're still seeing a lot of that. And so while they wanna make smart decisions and they wanna feel like they're part of the conversation, they're often told to just do what they're told to do, and it
yeah.
just means they're not getting to be part of that conversation and really start to talk about what their own values are. And so
Mhm.
this has been really hugely important to me and goes back to the fact that I've mentioned every person who walks in our door has a different story. We never
Mhm.
assume that we know where you've been and how you feel and the way you think ever. We
Yeah.
have that initial conversation to better understand what you really want out of the
Mm,
relationship because I feel like there's still a lot of advisors out there who do that. And there's a lot of women who just don't get to have the conversation the way they want to have it because, either they worked mainly with their husband or whoever, whether again it was a generational thing between generations where one may think differently than the other. And you've just got to have that ability to adapt and change to each person and how they think and feel.
yeah. If that widow is watching, what advice would you give to them so that they don't step on the landmines that they're having to navigate through that story?
Sure. I would say one of the biggest things, as I've said before, is you need to have a personal relationship with the person you're working with. Don't be afraid to ask questions. Also, don't think you need to know every fine detail, right? That's what we're here for. You don't need to go out and do all the research yourself and find the answers. You just need to be able to sit down with someone who will explain to you all the pros and cons to different decisions so that you can make that decision at the end of the day. So, what I
Yeah.
say is when you're having a conversation with somebody, and they're just telling you this is the way it's done and this is just how you need to do it, that's not helping you. You need to
Yeah.
understand why. And again, not saying you need to know everything, but your advisor should have the ability to explain to you why they're giving the advice that they're giving,
Mhm.
the trade-offs. At the end of the day, this is your choice. You do what you want to do. As long as you understand the trade-offs, that's really where the power lies. And so I tell people just really make sure to own that conversation, to connect with that person on a personal level. And if they're not willing to meet you there, find somebody new. There's plenty of advisors, there's plenty of us out there who do care about what you personally want and will have that conversation with you.
Yeah. So you shared a lot of insights and stories with us. What additional words of wisdom would you give us? Is there something you wanted to share that you didn't get a chance to?
I would say one of the biggest things is own your own story. This is something I learned recently, just kind of in conversations with our event about stories. Is own your own story. Uh, don't let somebody write your story for you. So whether that is what we just talked about of you've
Mhm,
inherited money or you've had a spouse pass on or something's changed in your family or maybe you're just starting to build your story.
mhm,
Own your own story and look for the resources out there that are looking to help you and not just necessarily sell you something. There's a lot of us who are willing to collaborate and share, as you yourself said, of how we can be helpful and inspire and
mhm.
provide advice. And so, again, I just want to remind people to own their own story and to look for ways that they can get help from others to do the best that they can.
Yeah. If someone's interested in working with you, who would be a good fit and what would be their next step?
Sure. So we have a couple of different ways to reach out to us. If you look up Apollon Wealth, you can find us as an individual advisors on the Apollon Wealth webpage. We have a landing page out there. I'd say we're mainly on LinkedIn these days. We actually have a specific LinkedIn page, Apollon Peachtree Corners, where you can read about all of the advisors. We have a no fee consultation meeting where if you just have a few questions and wonder, do I need to work with an advisor or I do want to work with an advisor? How do I go about this and know that you're the right fit for me? You can schedule that right on our LinkedIn page of just spending some time with us, getting to know us while we get to know you and to determine if that's a perfect fit for you.
If someone's not on LinkedIn, is there another way to get those updates?
Absolutely. So if you just go to the Apollon Wealth page, you'll find contact information where you can email us, you can call us. Yes, absolutely.
And where at what point in someone's life or career are they a good fit to work with you?
Yeah, I say typically who we are working with tends to be within 15 years of retirement or closer. That's you're kind of at those peak earning years
So
where
late
all of a
40s
sudden,
around,
yeah, I'd say
yeah.
late 40s, typically mid late 40s. I mean, it can
Okay.
be earlier than that too. It could be a
Yeah.
situation where all of a sudden you have a lot coming in the door, you have a lot going on financially, you're not sure how to manage all of it, and you need to get it all, kind of wrap your head around it. And so that's a great time to really engage us because we will think of all the peripheral financial topics that maybe you hadn't discussed yet and really make sure that you're on task and that it gets done. That can be the hardest part. We all have a million things to do and and it doesn't mean you don't know how, you couldn't do this on your own, but you don't necessarily have the time to do this on your own and
Yeah.
need somebody to be there to navigate you.
Cool. Yeah. Anything else?
It's been great.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you sharing your life with us today. I'm Jason Scott Montoya, and this has been an episode of the Share Life podcast. I will see you on the other side.
All right. Thank you.